Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you'll join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have 4 fascinating people on the show for you today. Shannon and Dean Hale will be here to celebrate Princess in Black. The princess is turning 10. Leah Cypess returns to the show to celebrate Braided. It's part of her Sisters Ever After series. And Carol Selleck will be here to celebrate her debut book. It's called Play For Me, Peter. Hey, my friends, when should you start to talk to your kids about money? Well, if you ask me, I would say as soon as possible. Helping our kids become financially literate is so very important. And thanks to owningthedash.com, talking to your kids about money and finances is easier than ever. Anthony Delaunay is a financial dad advisor and the founder of Owning the Dash LLC, an organization dedicated to promoting childhood financial literacy and family financial freedom. Delaunay has written a series of award-winning children's picture books that each teach basic lessons about money. He has also authored 2 financial self-help books geared towards helping young couples start their financial journey and towards helping older couples prepare for their transition into retirement. Owning the Dash empowers families by providing books, games, and activities that introduce fundamental financial lessons in a fun and engaging way, encouraging kids to think about certain scenarios and how they might respond, and help prepare kids for when they have to make important money decisions later in their life. All 5 of Anthony's books have been named Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Reads and would make a great addition to your family library. To learn more, please visit owningthedash.com. This episode is brought to you by Daphne Draws Data. From the imaginative mind of best-selling author Cole Nussbaumer Knaflick and the vibrant illustrations of John Skewers comes a story that will captivate kids and grown-ups alike. Daphne is not your ordinary dragon. She doesn't breathe fire. She breathes life into numbers, turning them into pictures that solve mysteries, forge friendships, and save the day. Daphne's journey celebrates unique talents, the power of teamwork, and the beauty of seeing the world through a different lens. This dragon's tale is perfect for parents and educators to inspire the next generation of curious minds and innovative thinkers. Get your copy today. Daphne Draws Data. My friends, we are going to have a treat today. Joining us right now from the great state of Utah, our guests are here to celebrate an early chapter book series, Princess in Black. Please welcome to the show Shannon and Dean Hale. Hey, folks, how are you?
Hi, good.
Hey.
Great to have you on. Shannon, you were with us last year. Why don't we start with you? Tell us all about Princess in Black.
Princess in Black turns 10 this year, so we have 10 in the series. Number 11 is just coming out. The Princess in Black came about because we were desperate as parents for a bridge book between the early readers and the chapter books. Early readers would have a couple hundred words, and then you'd get to Junie B. Jones and Magic Tree House, and it's 15,000 words, and that was just a really big leap for early readers. And we could not find many books like that. There was the Mercy Watson series, which we adored, and we have 4 children, and we wanted things that would have full color illustrations to captivate the younger kids next to us, but also chapters and bigger words and more complicated plots that would capture the older kids so we could read it all together. And that need as parents is one of the first things that led us to tackle The Princess in Black.
That's it seems like need is the starting point for so many great things in the world.
Right? Yes. It's true. So true. And then on top of that, it is a superhero story, and it has a real superhero origin story. Our second daughter, when she was 4, one day she was wearing a skirt with butterflies on it. And she started pointing to the different colors of the skirt. And she said, "Mama, pink is a girl color and purple is a girl color, but not black." And I was like, what? She's 4. Who is telling her that certain colors only belong to certain genders? And I said, of course girls can wear black. And she said, "Mama, princesses don't wear black." And I realized her little 4-year-old self had absorbed this visual information that I had never put together before, that she, in any kind of media had never seen a princess wearing black before. And it sounded like a superhero. So when Dean came home from work, I said, "Hey, sweetie, the princess in black."
She's a superhero.
Yes, and she needs to save the day, and she needs to protect what?
Goats.
Goats. And what is she protecting the goats from?
From monsters, clearly.
Monsters. And so we started writing The Princess in Black really for our own kids. And then it just grew from there.
I love the creative process that you folks just demonstrated for us. That must be a blast.
It's so fun. It's like it's the best job I've ever had is collaborating with my wife and being able to, and especially with this book, it's just like there's so many different ideas that we're bouncing off each other all the time, just little situations that can be, a lot of it's just about what we think is the funny, and we follow whatever it is that sticks to our brains that we think, might be, funny for us and for the kids.
What delights us. So
Yes.
we're looking at what is delightful and fun for us, but also because we have the children, we're always thinking from their point of view as well. Where our children are right now, what's funny to them, what delights them. And then we get to put all of that into a book. We really just wanted books that were irresistible to kids. Right around, when I was first starting out, I've published over 40 books. And when I was beginning, I was mostly writing novels for, older elementary and teen. And I was just noticing how many kids by age 10 said they were not a reader. And talking to teachers, talking to parents, discovered what a lot of other people have noticed is that around 3rd grade, if you haven't captured kids with books, it's really hard to get them back. So if we can get them falling in love with books in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, and feeling confident as readers, so that's meeting them where they are at their level and not forcing books that are beyond their level on them that makes them label themselves as not readers, then they're much more likely to be lifelong readers. And so we wanted just a fun, irresistible, well-made, gorgeously illustrated series for them that could meet them at those early ages before they turn off of reading.
Well, I'm delighted that you're thinking in this way and have a mission to get those young kids falling in love with reading, because as I've discovered, and it really never occurred to me before, in the way that we teach our kids here in the States, kids learn to read up until 2nd grade, and after that they need to read to learn. And if they're not readers, they ain't learning.
Yeah. It's really true.
Yeah. So tell me, you're talking about, writing things that delight you and that delight your kids. And have you seen over the decade that you've been creating these books, has what delights kids changed a whole lot?
Well, we definitely are doing more graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first started out, I had to tell people what graphic novels were. There were no graphic novels in bookstores, and libraries were just starting to get them, mostly manga. So I think in terms of the marketplace, it's just much more open now than ever for illustrated books beyond picture books, which I think is wonderful, because there are so many readers who are visual learners that we're really getting left behind by second grade going to third. Okay, all your books are words only. Good luck. Kick them out the door. And a lot of kids just can't make that transition, and they really shouldn't have to. And also, but on the other side of it, there are the kids like my oldest and me. My husband, Dean, he's a lifelong comic reader.
Yeah.
Our oldest, and including myself, we were devouring, novels at a very early age, and that was great for us. But that means we were not visual learners, and it was harder for us to decode visual cues. And then my husband and our second oldest, really intimidated by just text, very much a visual learner. So having things like graphic novels help the non-visual learners learn visual literacy, as well as really give an immediate hook to older kids and hold the hand of the visual learners through all of that. Princess in Black is not a graphic novel, but we definitely, because of, I think, the increasing graphic nature, meaning illustrated
nature.
Change in children's books, people were more open to books like this. And we have the amazing Lei Wen Pham, who's the illustrator. People are, I'll tell you one quick story. When I was talking to one of my kids' first grade teachers, she was telling me how often she finds out that the parents, when they're reading these early reader books with their kids to help them learn to read, will cover up the illustration with their hand, because they think the parent thinks the illustration is, and that they want the kids to learn to read on their own. And that mentality is really tragic. It's as though the parents clearly were raised that way, to believe reading is a chore. Reading should not be fun. Reading should not be delightful. It's work that you have to do, and you have to get through it. And you should not have any help from illustrations, let alone anything else. If you're not working hard and not enjoying it, you're probably doing it wrong. And we really want to inject a different attitude of of course, reading is fun. If kids read for pleasure, they're going to read more, and their skills aren't going to go up no matter what. We don't have to force that.
Yeah. Dean, I don't know, Shannon said that you're a visual learner. I think I am. I'm also tactile. I like to touch things. I was just thinking as she was talking, how much fun I had just looking at an illustration for minutes, maybe even an hour, and just trying to absorb everything that's in that illustration. And I remember doing that as a kid, and it was in a lot of ways more fun than sitting in front of a TV and this flashing. I guess the flashing almost felt like it was hypnotizing me, as opposed to looking at a static picture that allowed my imagination to go run free.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something about, I was really into comic books, as I was growing up, and there's something about being able to do it at your own pace and doing it multiple times, because usually my pattern was I would go through the comic book, for example, really fast first, just to get the story down, or at least the skeleton of the story in my brain. And then I would go back again and I would slowly parse through it and see, it felt like there was hidden information. And, they're telling me more about this story, or at least whether they were or my imagination was, the illustration was able to, I don't know, it cracked an extra level of storytelling that I was doing to myself, which was, really, really fun and made my imagination, it was exciting, I think.
Yeah.
And on top of that, for those who may be still reluctant about comics and graphic novels and visual storytelling, we now know just in research that when you have something told through words and pictures, it is attaching itself to two different parts of your brain. So you've got the visual and the textual tracks in your brain side by side, and you're more likely to retain information if you get that information through more than one means. I mean, one reason why a teacher will tell a class about something and write notes on the board, because those are two different ways to get information. They're more likely to receive it. If you add to that also a picture, if you add to that also something experiential and hands-on, some kinesthetic learning, then that's real learning. That's when people really absorb and understand. Expecting anyone to understand something simply through one means is just never going to be as effective.
Yeah.
And besides, kids don't care about that. We have to, convince the gatekeepers that actually they're not going to rot their brain. It's fine. But for the kids, they just know it's fun. They enjoy it.
Right. Dean, I don't know about you. One of the things I grew up with, and it's just coming to mind because right before we started, I was reading a news article of about the birth of Mad magazine.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, I think that Mad magazine was one of the reasons I fell in love with reading, because it was so much fun. And back then, almost 100 years ago, it was very irreverent and just a delight.
Yeah. Oh, I remember, it's funny. I remember Mad because for some reason Santa Claus decided to put Mad magazine in my stocking at Christmas time. And so I have this strange association with Mad magazine and Christmas and like being excited and like it was a like a present to be able to do.
Yeah. Shannon, Dean just reminded me, one of the gifts that I always look forward to, that my dad gave me on my birthday was a subscription to Sports Illustrated. And, so every week I was getting that thing that I could dive into. Unfortunately, magazines seem to have died away. But, I think when we as parents, give the gift of reading, whether it's a book or a comic or a graphic novel, it just lets them know how much we think reading is fun, how much we enjoy reading, and how much we hope that they enjoy reading too.
Yes, and hopefully meeting the kid where they are. Some kids just don't enjoy fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And they might really love Sports Illustrated or Popular Mechanics or, those illustrated almanacs. One of our kids love getting those for Christmas every year. Or, the Guinness Book of World Records. Or sometimes facts and nonfiction really it bring a kid more excited to read than anything else. So, I think a lot of parents, even some parents who didn't grow up as readers, feel really lost how to get their kids on reading or really even know why it matters. But I've also seen parents who love to read get lost because they're giving all the kids the books that they loved when they were kids. And then the kids aren't loving them and they're like, well, I guess my kid's not a reader. And they get frustrated. But no, it's just there's so much variety. And this is a golden age of children's literature because there are so many choices. So not every book is right for every kid, but for every kid, there should be that right book out there. And, if you're not sure where to look, make friends with your local children's librarian, man. They're superheroes.
Yes, indeed. What is it that brings that just drives both of you to keep creating these fun stories for kids?
I love it. I mean, it's my dream job. I've written in every age group and in just about every genre that there is, from picture books and early chapter books, graphic novels, screenplays, middle grade novels, young adult novels, adult, realism, memoir, science fiction, fantasy. There's so many different kinds of stories that I love, and I just don't ever feel like I run out of ideas. But I am very motivated by when I discover a story or a kind of book that I feel like, oh, there are kids that need this, and there's just not enough of it for them. So that for me is incredibly motivating to be like, somewhere out there's a kid that's going to be like, this is just for me. I feel seen. I love that.
For me, so much of it is about the play. It's like, it's a little bit, it's almost nostalgic in a way that it kind of throws me back to, before I defined what adulthood was like. Being able to just throw out ideas. It can be anything. It can be as absurd as you want, and to have a partner to do that with, to be able to receive and come back, and it just feels like playing. There's work to it too, but there's so much of it that feels like just being on the playground and making up a story.
So how does that, you kind of demonstrated a little bit about that process, but how does it start? Is it you, Dean, you come up with an idea like, oh, the princess is making porridge, or, and
it could be either one of us. And, it could be, one of us will say something and it will spark what the other person says. And then, there's the whole idea generation part, but then once we have an idea that feels sticky, like that we want, that keeps, attaching new ideas to, we tend to, we'll like take a little walk around, outside, and we'll just kind of plot together, talking back and forth about, well, what would happen next, and what, holds this together, and what is it? What's the emotional, drive of this story?
Do you ever get to the point where you're taking that walk and the ideas are coming, and there's so many ideas, and then you get home and you forgot the first part of have to go back and reconstruct?
Yes.
We've got our phone and we're writing down notes. Yes,
yeah.
Because and then often we'll just sit for hours. Usually I'm the one on the laptop. I'm a faster typer, and and then we're chatting, and I'm writing,
yeah.
and then we just get reams and reams of notes. One thing when you're co-writing is that you do more work up front. For what I've noticed with collaboration is the outline process often can take longer than the actual writing of the book, because you've got to work out and agree on all the different pieces of it before you're committing to writing a first draft. So we could write sometimes outlines that are longer than what the book will be. And you don't always use all your ideas, of course. And then once you write it, you realize, oh, actually, once we see this didn't work quite as well as we wanted. And so you're deleting and adding and deleting and adding and revising and revising. And especially with books like Princess in Black, which are going to be, frequently novels are read once. But these younger books, picture books and early chapter books, they will be reread sometimes hundreds of times, as we know from experience, and still have some of those books memorized from when our children were younger. So you want to make sure every word feels right, that it feels right read aloud as well as read on the page, and read it aloud over. I'll read them aloud to myself over and over and over again, just trying to fine tune it to make sure that those parents who are up late reading to their kids are not frustrated with us when the words don't feel right.
That's, I love this process. I love that you're working together and bringing this fun to kids. Dean, do you ever, as a dad collaborating on this, do you have to work hard not to try to squeeze in dad jokes into the story?
I don't work very hard not to do that. I think there are oftentimes I will just spew out whatever, I think that is funny or ridiculous. And then, that gets filtered out in the natural process of editing.
Which is me deleting it.
But it's nice too, because, because I know that I have a good editor in house here to, translate whatever it is that I'm, the joke that I'm trying to get through. There's not a lot of writer's block. I'm able to just keep going.
He's pretty free just to throw stuff down because he knows I
know someone is going to take care of it.
Faithful over here is going to be cleaning up the mess.
Yeah,
afterwards.
Right.
I had a feeling Shannon was going to say that by the look she was giving you as you. Now, do your kids?
But that's good. I don't mean that as a negative way. It is freeing because we've got, what I've got here is a partner who's an idea generator and just can throw a bunch of stuff out. And then I can look at it and go, no, delete. This one has potential. let me take half that sentence and add something else. And, that's how you get good stuff. You're never going to get the good stuff just writing something one time.
Right, right. I'm curious, do your kids, what do your kids think when they see you in this collaboration mode and you're just going back and forth like, people playing ping pong?
They think, why aren't you paying attention to me?
Yeah, that's true. They're like, and especially if we get into an odd, we're talking about funny things. Our older kids will be like, well, I guess all of them now are older kids. They're teenagers.
They're all teenagers now. Yeah.
Will look at us like, like we're being ridiculous or silly or.
I think they're just used to it. Yeah. We're just their weird parents. That's not a big deal. I mean, we've been, since our first baby was born, my first book came out before my first baby was born. So this has just been their life.
Yeah. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Princess in Black and more about both of you.
I have a website, shannonhale.com, and Candlewick has a wonderful website, princessinblack.com.
Yeah. There's lots of great activities and information there and links to buy the book. They've done some great stuff. They've
got free downloadable stuff for reading groups and school classes, but also a lot of people do Princess in Black themed birthday parties, and they've got a lot of activities that you can download and crafts. It's great.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the creators of Princess in Black. Our guests have been Shannon and Dean Hale. My friends, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from the great state of Maryland. Our guest is back on Reading with Your Kids to celebrate book number 5 in her Sisters Ever After series. It's called Braided. Please welcome back to the show, Leah Cypess. Hey, Leah, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me back.
I'm really excited to have you back. You were sharing with me before we started that Braided is a retelling of the story of Rapunzel.
Yes. Well, not so much a retelling as an epilogue. So Braided is the story of Rapunzel's little sister who was born after Rapunzel was kidnapped and has spent her whole life wishing for her older sister to return. And Braided starts at the point where Rapunzel does return, and then things don't go exactly the way her sister had been hoping they would.
Wow. Siblings, things don't go well when siblings get together. What a unique idea.
Yes. Some of the theme of the whole series, right?
So who is Rapunzel's little sister? What's her name and what's she all about?
So her name is Cinna. So in my retelling of Rapunzel, as in most modern retellings of Rapunzel, Rapunzel's hair is not just a convenient, ladder. Her hair has magical powers. And the way the magic in the book works is that there are braids, and the braids are spells. So their hair has magic, And by doing different braid combinations, they can make different spells out of their hair that give them, various powers like strength, grace, whatever it is they want. So Cinna, like Rapunzel, has that long hair, with the magic powers, and everyone always knew that if Rapunzel never came back, Cinna would be the next queen, and she would need that magic to run the kingdom. But when Cinna never wanted that. She always wanted her sister. So when she sees Rapunzel coming back, she decides that she has to show Rapunzel, who she's never met, that she doesn't want what is rightfully Rapunzel's. And the way she decides to do that is by cutting off all her hair. So that's what she does in the very first chapter of the book. She cuts off all her magical hair.
Oh, wow. I never thought of hair having magic, not possessing a lot myself. It's a neat idea that the way you braid your hair is like a different magical spell. I know as a dad of a daughter who had beautiful, beautiful hair, I needed to cast some kind of magical spell in order to braid her hair. It was a challenge.
Yeah. So when I came up with this idea, I was like, usually I write for myself and I don't really think about my audience, but I came up with this idea and I was like, my readers are going to love this idea. And I got very excited about it. And I have an 8-year-old daughter who has very long hair, and I started getting super into braiding. It got to the point where all Instagram showed me all day long were braiding videos, and I got books about braiding, and I learned how to make her hair really fancy, and for a while she was into it, and it was super fun. And then one day she was like, I think I just want a ponytail today, and it was over.
Well, that's interesting. There were so many different things that both my son and daughter that we did, and they loved it, and it was always such a good time. And then, like with your daughter, one day it was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with that, and it's really heartbreaking sometimes.
Because as a parent, you're like, I'm not done with it.
Exactly. Where did the kind of idea for this come from? Such a unique idea.
So really, I was thinking about their hair and how to make it fun and magical, and an intrinsic part of the story. And actually, I had come up with another idea first, which is that their hair changes colors based on their emotions. And that's still in there. And then as I was writing, and I was just writing what they do with their hair, they braid it. I just got the idea, well, what if their hair is magic? How would you make spells out of that magic? I think you would do it through braids and hairstyles. So
what is it about these old stories that inspires you to kind of come up and get kids to look at them in different ways?
Right. So I love retellings, and I think that part of the power of a retelling is that you're basing it on a story that people already know, that's really deep in our collective subconscious, and also that the kids know. But at the same time, it's not like, fairy tales are so old and have been told in so many versions that you're not really tied down to any one narrative. So essentially you take this core and then you can do whatever you want with it. And hopefully you get some of the power of that core idea and you put it into your story, while at the same time you can do something interesting and fun with your retelling of it.
Yeah. You mentioned that you don't think about your audience typically when you're writing, but what is it about this audience that you enjoy writing for?
So I love writing middle grade books, especially because for me, that was when I got really into reading. I actually wasn't a strong reader as a kid. Like I remember in first grade, which is when they taught us to read back in my time. I think they've moved it earlier now. But I remember in first grade, a friend of mine was reading a sentence off a blackboard, and I remember looking at her and thinking, how are you able to do that? I can't do that. So I didn't actually even start out as such a strong reader, but when I got to middle grade, when I got to those books, that was when I really became obsessed with reading. And that was what gave me my love for reading. So in my heart, middle grade books are really like where the love for reading and the sense of wonder and everything you can get from reading starts. So I really love being able to contribute books to that age.
Yeah. I think I had a similar experience. I do remember the first picture book I owned, and I really adored that book. It was Mr. Bear Goes to Boston, and it was about a bear in Maine who got on the train and came down and visited all the places in my city that I loved visiting. But the other books at that time, the books, especially the books that I was reading in school, they were Dick and Jane.
Right. I remember them.
Oh, they were horrendous. And I remember thinking as a kid that this isn't fun at all. I had no desire to read those books. But when I got to the middle grade, middle school kind of age, that's when I found a series with a main character named Todd Moran, who went off on adventures out to sea. He would work on these freighter ships, and boy, I loved being able to. It was kind of like exploring a world by yourself, going someplace by yourself. Your friends weren't there, your parents weren't there. You were just going off on an adventure, and it was so interesting and freeing and exciting, I think.
Right. Yes. And also fun. I feel like books these age are just, they can be very fun. Right. Yeah.
And especially books like yours that have all the dragons and the magic and evil twists and turns.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say of all the books in the series so far, I think that Braided was the most fun to write. First of all, just because, the hairstyles was fun. And also I finally got a dragon into the book because I love dragons, and dragon is even on the cover, which fills me with joy. And then also I did this little, I kind of had little flashbacks because all along Cinna has been writing letters to Rapunzel. So I start each chapter with a flashback to a letter she wrote to Rapunzel. And then in the end, I kind of like take those letters and have a fun twist to them, which when I thought of it, I was like, oh yeah, this is so good. Which, as a writer, when you're really excited about something that just came out of your brain, it's super fun and exciting.
Wow. So remind us, so book number 5, Braided, is kind of based, anchored on the story of Rapunzel.
Yes.
What are the other first 4 books based on?
Sure. So the first book, Thornwood, is Sleeping Beauty. It's Sleeping Beauty's little sister, who they wake up after the 100-year spell, and she doesn't trust the prince who woke up Sleeping Beauty, and no one will listen to her. Then the second one is Glass Slippers. It's actually Cinderella's third stepsister, who was just a baby when the whole story happened. So now she's older and she's being raised in the castle, and everything seems fine until Cinderella's glass slippers go missing and everyone thinks that she stole them. The third book in the series is The Piper's Promise. That is the story of the Pied Piper's little sister who comes to Hamelin to try to find out, what her brother was doing and where the children that he kidnapped are. And the fourth one, The Last Rose, is Beauty and the Beast, and it's Beauty's little sister who does not think it's a great idea for her sister to be, trapped in a castle with this beast and then marrying him.
Wow. What's next? Do you have a new book that is coming out soon?
Yeah, so there is a 6th book, and that's going to be the last one. It's a total series of 6 books, and the 6th one, which I actually just finished finalizing the pages for and sending them back to my publisher, is going to be The Little Mermaid's little sister, and that will be the last one in the series, and that is coming out in April, I believe.
One of the things that is a lot of fun, and I think would be a lot of fun for families, especially with kids, families that love sharing the fairy tales, is the fact that these stories are kind of universal. And as you said earlier, they've been told for hundreds of years, and they're very different in different cultures. And I think that would be
Right.
really, that was one of the things my beautiful wife did with her class, would be to look at Cinderella that comes from Mexico, and Cinderella that comes from, different countries, and compare and contrast. And I think that'd be a fun thing for families to do.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So when I was researching each of these fairy tales, and again, I didn't research them as I'm not writing a doctoral dissertation on fairy tales. I'm doing my own spin, but I did with all of them look at the roots of them and where they came from. And there are some, like, let's say The Little Mermaid, where we actually know who wrote the story, and we can trace its progression. And then there are others, like, for example, Cinderella, where there's just a million versions of it across different cultures. And it's really interesting to see how each culture and, in the case of a story that has an origin, each generation kind of shifts the story to fit its own, perceptions and its own, the type of story that it likes to tell.
Yeah, yeah. And most of those stories, especially the further back you get, the kind of darker and.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it about writing for kids that you love so much? Middle grade kids, young teens?
So I really love the fact that you can't get away with anything. So in other words, you have to keep the story moving. Things have to make sense. I mean, so when I write my books, I usually read them to my kids, often as I'm writing them. And, they will not let me get away with anything. Like if there's a chapter in which, nothing really moves, they'll be like, this chapter was boring. And although I have to go back and rewrite it, or if, someone does something, a character does something for, motivations that make sense in my mind, but they're not on the page, they'll just be like, that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, if you get it right and you get a kid to enjoy a book, again, they will just kind of love that book and immerse themselves in the book in the way that I don't know. I mean, as an adult, I will still immerse myself into a book that way, but I feel like it's more common with children. That if they love a book, they really love it. Yeah. And they're waiting for the next one, and they let you know that you're taking too long to write that.
You mentioned that you're taking these classic stories and you're adding your own spin to it and adding characters. In the course of creating the series, did you ever kind of start and go in one direction and then figure out this ain't working, I got to go back and create a new character or take a different approach to it?
Oh, yeah. So that happens to me all the time. Because as you probably know, there are two kinds of writers. There are outliners who lay out the whole story first. They know what's going to happen and then they write it. And then there's what's called pantsers who write by the seat of their pants, meaning I start writing. I have only a vague idea of where I'm going. And I figure it out as I'm writing it. Now, the drawback of doing it that way is that sometimes you're writing and then you're like, oh, wait, this was wrong. I wrote the wrong, this doesn't make sense. This character wouldn't do that. Or I've written the story in a way that, I can't make the ending good, or, this character has now done something that makes them completely unlikable. And so not just in these books, but for every book I write, really, I end up deleting, thousands of words when I realize that I've gone in the wrong direction. And especially in these, because I do the research, I do research into those fairy tales, and sometimes I get a little too deep into the research, and not enough into my own story that I'm telling. And that's something that happens to me a lot, is that I'm kind of like, the research has led me in one direction, and then I have to pull back and say, no, but that's not the story I'm telling. And I'm not bound by what the story was originally. I'm telling a new story. So sometimes I have to pull back and take the story in a different direction, to make it more my own. So, and then even after I finish the first draft and I read it over and I need to revise, a lot of times I'll be like, well, this scene over here, I needed to move from one thing to another. And this was how I thought it was going to happen. But upon reading it, this doesn't work. So I just have to erase this and rewrite it, or start something new.
Interesting. Pantsers. I've never heard that term, but as you were saying it, I realized in my own career doing educational magic shows, I wing everything, and there's lots of improv, and I'll have an idea of what I want to do in a show, but there's lots of times when I just go off. And unlike you, you're writing in a studio by yourself, so if you get 1,000 words in and it ain't working, you can just crumple up things and throw it away. I've had the experience of getting halfway through a story in front of a group of 600 kids and thinking, oh, this ain't going to work. All right. And having to tell the audience that what I said is nonsense. We're going to do something.
Wow. So I mean, that's my worst nightmare. That's why for me, sequels are so hard to write, because the first one is already out in public and I can't change anything about it. Like very often I will write, with Glass Slippers, for example, I wrote the entire book. It was all done. And then I completely rewrote the first two chapters because they didn't work anymore with what the book had become. So for me, the fact that I'm doing it in private and I can just change things and nobody's going to ever know what it looked like originally, that's the only reason I can do it. What you said about doing it in front of an audience, that's amazing. I could never pull that off.
It's only happened a couple of times where I just run out of steam and go, never mind. I'm usually able to pull something out or make a joke. Wow, that's I have to keep that in my mind. I'm a pantser on stage. Is there a subject or a type of story that you are really looking forward to diving into, or a genre that is like, gee, I'd love to be able to do that, but I don't know if it's me?
Well, the one genre that I like to read and that I'd love to write someday is adult historical fiction. And it's not so much that it's not me, as that it obviously requires intense amounts of research. So there is a part of me that's like, oh, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could do all that research, keep it in my mind, write a story that's, set in the past, that's accurate the way some of my beloved authors do. But I have an ambition that someday I will write an adult historical fiction.
Awesome. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Braided and the other books in the series, and also more about you.
Oh, so the easiest place is my website, leahcypess.com. There's no R in Cypess because everyone makes that mistake. And I keep my website updated very regularly. So any information that I get, it goes on my website pretty much immediately. I'm also on Instagram as Leah Cypess, and I tend to post, updates and things there also.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Braided. It's number 5 in the Sisters Ever After series. Our guest has been Leah Cypess. Leah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Join us right now from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut children's book. Is called Play for Me, Peter. Please welcome to the show, Carol Selleck. Hey, Carol, how are you?
I'm great. It's going to be fun to have this interview today.
We're really excited to have you tell us all about Play for Me, Peter. What's this book about, please?
This book is about a young boy who spends a lot of time with his grandparents, and his grandfather is a professional jazz musician who plays jazz piano. And he wants to be just like his grandfather, and his grandfather shows him some simple songs to play, and they play duets together. But then, unfortunately, his grandfather passes away, and the music is gone, and he and his grandmother are very sad. He tries to remember what his grandfather showed him on the piano, and then he opens up the piano bench, and there's sheet music piles, and under the sheet music is an envelope with his name on it. And his grandmother tells him to open the envelope, and there is money from his grandfather. And so his grandmother says, I know exactly what we're going to do with this. So they go to a music store, and he has his first piano lesson. And he learns the basics, but he tells his teacher, this doesn't sound like the jazz that my grandfather played. And his teacher tells him he has to be patient and work very hard. So he practices every day at his grandparents' house. And one day, his grandmother gets up and starts to dance and says, "I can't sit still. This reminds me of the music your grandfather played. Keep playing." And so I also have a song at the end of the book, Every Good Boy Does Fine, to help children remember the notes on the staff. And I did teach piano for 30 years, mostly beginners. And I have a degree in early childhood education and elementary education.
Wow, this sounds like fun. I love this idea of helping kids understand that, you just don't sit down at the piano and start riffing and playing jazz. It's step by step by step, but eventually you're going to get there.
Exactly. I think it is a good message, and it's just like anything else. If you love doing it, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then the better you get at something, the more you love doing it.
Isn't that true? Isn't that true?
Yeah.
The more you love something, the more you're willing to practice and put that hard work into it.
Exactly. And it doesn't feel like practice. And as I said, I'm a musician, and now my husband is a trumpet player and a singer, and we perform together sometimes, but he can spend literally hours practicing his trumpet. Yes, well, I actually sang in quite a few wedding bands, and I written various types of music, and one of them was I went to Nashville and I made some demos, and that's exactly what would happen. These musicians that worked with big famous artists would come off the road, and then they would do these recording sessions, and they would just look at the music, and it sounded like they'd been playing together forever. Mm-hmm. But that comes with a lot of work. And yeah, I think people don't realize that playing a musical instrument, there are so many hours that goes into it. It's not just like, you just waltz into a performing venue and play.
Right, right. What is your favorite type of music?
Right now, I've always loved singer-songwriter music and blues, people like Bonnie Raitt, Carole King. My first book that wasn't a children's book was, I self-published it a few years ago, called Beyond the Song. And it talks about my experiences and coming of age in the late 60s and early 70s. And it has original lyrics starting every chapter. And this was the time of Carole King, Joni Mitchell, Laura Nyro. And I do go to libraries and certain organizations, and I perform songs from those groundbreaking women singer-songwriters. And it sort of goes along with my book.
Yeah. It would be a great benefit for our listeners, Carol, is if you told them where they can go to find out more about Play For Me, Peter, and also find out more about you.
Well, they can go to my website, which is carolsellickbooks.com.
We've had a really great time speaking to the author of Play For Me, Peter, the debut children's book from our guest, Carol Sellick. Hey, Carol, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. This was fun.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and we hope that it inspired you to subscribe to the show on whatever podcasting app you may have found us. And if you are listening, to us on the AM/FM 24/7 radio network. We hope it inspires you to let the folks in your local radio station know that you love the show and thank them for having us on. And again, if you are subscribed to the show on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving a 5-star review. That helps other people find us. And it's a great way to spread the mission of helping families grow closer through reading. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guests. First off, Shannon and Dean Hale. Be sure to check out the Princess in Black series. Leah Cypess. Her Sisters Ever After series is wonderful. The new book is called Braided. And, of course, we want to thank debut children's author Carol Selleck. Please check out Play For Me, Peter. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Judy Hu, Stella Sheree, Hannibal Sanj, Alyssa Montiero, Devin Hill, Riley Oluwu. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place, and you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.